No mention of psychiatric problems under the warning section of that package insert.
There's alternatives that can be taken. There's just no reason that Americans should be taking Lariam.
Doxycycline, a common antibiotic, and Malarone, approved 2 years ago, are both effective in preventing malaria and have fewer psychiatric side effects than Lariam. Roche, the drug company, claims that Lariam causes serious psychiatric side effects in only 1 in 10,000 people. But Dr. Paul Clark, an infectious disease specialist and the medical director of a large network of travel clinics in Great Britain, organized his own study after he and other British doctors saw problems with much greater frequency.
It was confusion, it was disorientation, it was anxiety and panic attacks. There were episodes in which people indeed had unusual symptoms that could be described as psychotic.
Their research confirmed the hunch. Not 1 in 10,000, but closer to 1 in 140 suffered disabling side effects like the ones Dr. Clark had seen in his patients. Why such a huge difference in the numbers? Because of the key difference between the term disabling in Dr. Clark's study and the term serious as used by the drug company. In Roche's study, serious meant you had to be dead, in the hospital, or have a long-term disability to count. It's an industry standard all drug companies use. But with that narrow definition, Dr. Clark says, Roche's study may have failed to identify up to 70 times more patients with troubling side effects. These were disabling, these were crippling for these.
They were disabling as we defined it, which was that you were unable to carry out the functions for which you went out on your travels, which is actually serious. To any ordinary person, it's serious. But
based in part on Dr. Clark's study, British authorities began to recommend using Lariam less often. Despite his concerns, though, he still says Lariam can be a useful drug.
It's very easy to take once a week. It gives you very good protection. You get good compliance. And if you've taken it in the past and never had a problem with it, I, for one, would be very sorry to see it go, because it's a good drug.
You just want people to be better informed.
Yes.
We wanted to ask both the FDA and the CDC about how well the American public is informed of Lariam's potential dangers, but both government agencies chose not to do an interview. The FDA did send us a statement saying that Lariam's benefits far outweigh its risks. Roche also declined our request for an interview, but sent us this statement saying in part that no prescription drug is free of side effects. Roche also said there's no way for a physician to predict every person at risk for psychiatric side effects. Linda Perry considers her husband a perfect example of that. Did your husband have any prior history of depression or mental illness?
Absolutely none.
In 1998, Linda and Chuck Perry left their Midwest ranch and their 7 children to go on an African safari for their 30th wedding anniversary. Linda, a registered nurse, checked with her doctor, pharmacist, and local health department. For malaria protection, they all recommended Lariam.
The first warning I ever got was from the safari guide in Africa. She says to me, well, why do you take Lariam? And it's a hallucinogen, very much like LSD. And I said, the CDC recommends it. And she said, well, we never take it.
After 4 doses of Lariam, the Perrys were having night sweats and vivid nightmares. But everyone, including the CDC, had stressed taking the full dose of the drug, which meant taking it for 4 weeks after the trip. That's when Chuck Perry's real problems began.
Didn't know where he was. He ran out in the yard. I can remember tackling him in the yard, saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, the neighbors are after me, somebody's after me, and it was just bizarre, just bizarre.
You had never seen anything like this from him before?
Ever. He's the rock of the earth, salt of the earth.
Chuck Perry was hospitalized and tested repeatedly. A team of doctors became convinced that Lariam was responsible. And told you you could do what?
They didn't know what to, we didn't know what to do. Let him rest. They didn't know, nobody knew what to do.
6 months after returning home from Africa, Chuck Perry committed suicide.
We had no way to know that this drug would be so powerful that it could alter his personality so much and damage him so much that he would in fact do that in some type of delusion or hallucination. That's what we didn't know.
But Roche did know something about Lariam and suicide. Over the past year, 2 UPI reporters, Dan Olmsted and Mark Benjamin, unearthed these internal documents. They show that by the time Chuck Perry killed himself, the company knew of at least 7 suicides and 13 suicide attempts by people living outside the United States, all associated with Lariam. But nowhere in its product information was there any mention of the word suicide. After 2 years of trying to attribute Chuck Perry's suicide to other causes, Roche quietly settled a wrongful death suit with Linda Perry last May. 2 months later, Roche dramatically changed its product information. Psychiatric side effects are now in the warning section, including, for the first time, rare cases of suicide. But Roche says there is no proof linking its drug to suicide and points out that Chuck Perry is the only reported American suicide of the more than 5 million people who have taken Lariam in the U.S. That doesn't address the other suicide reports outside the United States, but Roche says those cases are well below the suicide rate in the general population. When we requested current figures, Roche declined, saying that accurate numbers on all reported events are hard to come by.
What is not clear is how many people may have been permanently damaged, if any, or indeed may have gone as far as a psychotic episode which might have led to some other ghastly accident.
But could it have led to murder at Fort Bragg? In early November, the Army released its findings, which said that Lariam, in the Army's words, does not explain the clustering of violent deaths there. As a result, the military probably won't change its policy on Lariam's use.
Should it be given to soldiers with guns?
I would not give it to them. And I would, because we do have alternatives and we do know they're effective.
Unlike the U.S., Great Britain, Germany, and Australia did not give their soldiers Lariam in Afghanistan, opting instead for those alternatives. But as the United States prepares for the possibility of war with Iraq, some of our American troops already are being given Lariam.
The Fifth Estate.
Hello, I'm Hannah Gartner. Welcome to the Fifth Estate. Tonight, we sent our soldiers off to fight for us, even die for us, in some of the world's worst places. And we gave them a little something to help them stay safe. But for some, that little something became a ticket to hell. For Canadian soldiers in third world theaters, tropical diseases like malaria are more of a threat than enemy bullets. Enter MEF-TOX-VET, anti-malaria medicine, highly effective.
It's more used than any other anti-malarial for the risky parts of the world.
But what our troops were not told was that in many cases they were guinea pigs for a drug that is now being connected with horrifying side effects, hideous nightmares.
It's like plugged-in colors and sick, morbid. I mutilated bodies in my dreams.
Episodes of madness.
I hold a pistol to a child's head in a macabre game, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. His friends laugh at the joke of it, but scatter when I point it at them.
And worse. Did he act on any of these violent impulses while he was in Somalia?
Yes. That's all I can say.
There are no photographs.
There were no photographs.
But he confessed to you.
He has described a number of incidents involving himself and others.
We watched them march onto transport planes and troop ships and march off to do our dirty work, fighting and peacekeeping in some of the world's worst corners. And we think we understand their sacrifice and the risks they're running. But neither our Canadian military personnel nor the Canadian public really understood the risks contained in those MEF-TOX-VET pills. It has taken years of agony for some soldiers and their families, and now a shocking eruption of violence at an American military base to reveal the entire story of what was done in the name of keeping our troops safe when we gave them the nightmare drug. When soldiers die in the line of duty, their bravery usually buys them a medal and a place alongside other Canadian warriors.
I think
This mother's son died in Rwanda 8 years ago. But 23-year-old Corporal Scott Smith did not die in the line of duty. So Val Smith had to fight the Canadian military before it would honor her only child's memory.
He was joking around in the room at one point, and then he left. And a short while later, they heard a shot, and he was gone.
It was Christmas Eve, 1994, when Val Smith got the call. Now all she has left is Scott's medal and a letter telling her they'll have their Christmas when he gets home.
He was looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're going to celebrate Christmas in February with the family. We all promised that we would do that when he came home.
Val Smith is convinced her son did not want to die. She believes that what made him put a bullet through his head was a terrible reaction to a drug the Army prescribed to keep him alive. This man also blames the drug, the anti-malaria pill called MEF-TOX-VET, for what has happened to him. When Ron Smith came home from Somalia as part of the disgraced and now disbanded airborne regiment, his own family did not recognize him. He had become depressed, angry, and paranoid. Today, he lives in the woods of northern Ontario, mostly keeping to himself. He thinks antipsychotic medication and his daily ritual of chopping trees is all that keeps him from killing himself or anyone else. Some believe the mystery of what happened to these men is connected to a rash of murders and suicides this past summer.
A Special Forces soldier killed his wife and then himself just days
Sergeant Wright led detectives to his wife's body, which he had
preliminary
buried
autopsy has shown that 32-year-old
Wright military reservation.
They occurred at a military base near Fayetteville, North Carolina. Fort Bragg boasts about being the biggest and the best. After all, this is the largest Army installation in the world. 43,000 soldiers, including the elite Green Beret and Special Operations Command, are based here and are deployed from here. They fight all over the world. They were there during Desert Storm, in Kosovo, in Afghanistan. They're particularly proud of the role they're playing in Operation Enduring Freedom, their war on terrorism outside the United States. But the thing military brass cannot explain is why some of their soldiers are coming home and killing their wives.
And in any homicide investigation, we always start with the person closest to the victim and then work our way out from that inner circle.
Sam Pennica is a homicide detective. His little town usually turns up more than enough murders for him to solve. The question is, why in the space of 2 months has Fort Bragg added 6 dead people to his list? How far down?
Oh, about 40 or 50 feet.
They were still in high school when they fell in love and married. Everyone thought they were just a great-looking, fun-loving couple.
I love you too.
And they were.
Hey, John.
For almost 14 years. Jennifer's job was taking care of the house and homeschooling their 3 boys.
Here they come home. Let's go outside.
While Bill, who was with the elite Special Forces, traveled the world fighting for Uncle Sam.
To be in Special Forces, you have to be really physical, mental, and on top of everything. And he climbed clear up to a master sergeant. That's a big deal.
Archie Watson thought his daughter had made a good match in Bill Wright.
I really did like Bill. He had such a nice personality, real friendly, always willing to help you.
When he was there, but Bill Wright was only home for 3 months of the year.
And we are here tonight in honor of Grandma. We're celebrating her birthday. We're having a party. Yay! Party!
So he isn't in very many of these happy home videos, and it became an issue for Jennifer, who wanted him to spend more time at home. That is, until she began noticing changes in her husband's personality. And it scared her.
She would say, Bill,